Chitamo. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you for being here in good spirits. Today I will start. Sorry, try to get the mic together. Today I will activate a land acknowledgement. My people are the Yamasee Seminole people of the Southeast, which today is called Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. I've been in New York for over 35 years. I've taught and worked with many of the indigenous tribes here. Some of these tribes are the Shinnecock, Montauk, Matinecock tribes, the Sitelicock. These tribes are the local tribes here. So when acknowledging the land, we have to acknowledge the people. And these are the people who are caretaking the land today, not only the land, the water. So today we acknowledge the earth, the sun, and the moons. All of these is what gives us life, that gives us food, that allows us to navigate and travel. Today we acknowledge these ancestors of the people. We acknowledge the animals, the two-legged, the four-legged, for those who provide us food. We thank our ancestors. That's how we are going to activate this land acknowledgement. Today I'm gonna ask you to think about your ancestral culture, your ancestral people, your ancestral lands, your ancestral language, your ancestral recipes. These customs today is why you are here today. These customs are here today and why I'm here today. I've been an educator for many moons. I've taught many students here in New York City. I've also had to stop teaching because I had to understand I was not teaching students how to investigate, how to invest in their own identity and their own culture. I was teaching culture that was created by people who didn't look like us, who didn't write our own history. These people gave us history. So sometimes when you look at people who stand in front of you, you may not understand, this doesn't make sense. It's because we've been reading and learning from people who don't and did not write the books that you have been given the information. So today, we're gonna start with something called a medicine bag. A medicine bag is how I carry my ancestors with me. When my ancestors are no longer here, memories, items, clothing become sacred to me, and I keep this with me everywhere. Every one of my ancestors, from my great-grandfather, the obituaries are in these bags. This is my uncle who recently passed. So I keep my ancestors with me along with sacred herbs. So today, an important ritual that we do as welcoming and acknowledging the ground and the bones you stand on, New York City, is made up of many stolen grave sites where these buildings are built on the bones of the ancestors. So, for us to walk and navigate safely and freely, we have to acknowledge these spirits and ancestors that are with us, even your own. So today, we're gonna start with something called the water ceremony. The water ceremony is important because we believe in energy. Everything we touch, we smell, we create has energy. Colors have energy, words have energy. So this is how tradition is passed on through energy. So today, with the water ceremony, I'm gonna ask everybody, there's a picture on the right side of the group, and there's a cup under your seat. If everyone can pick up the brown cup. And I'm gonna ask the person on the right side to pour just a tad bit of water, and we're gonna pass that all the way down. And when I'm gonna explain to you what you do when holding this water, you don't need to fill it all the way. Just pour a little bit in the cup and pass it to the next person so they can do this. This is how we are passing energy. Water flows, water provides energy. So at this moment, we're asking everybody to take just a tab of water, put it in your cup. We're gonna wait till the water gets to the center. Excellent. Water is a way that we provide ways for the future. We grow using water. We give offerings of water. and water provides for us. So at this moment, I would like you to take a moment, look at your water, take a deep breath, say your name into this water. And once you have said your name in this water, we are all here gathered today, and just say, what is your goal? What is it that you want to learn? What is it that you need? What is it that healing that you desire? So just take a moment and breathe it in and let it out in the water. Okay. So now that everybody has said their message in their water, we are going to gather the water to move, continue this current of moving this way. So I'm going to gather everyone's water in this cup, and we're going to pour a libation. A libation is what we pour to our ancestors to open the road so that you are here safe, you are here freely, you are here in right mind, you are right, and you're here in spirit. So we may come with baggage, we may come with feelings, we may come with emotions. Let this water at this time allow you to be centered here and focus on your goal. And allow that ancestor, allow your language, your culture to guide you, to understand why are you here? How are you here to bring good? Understand we are here human beings. Our ancestors struggled. They came so many different ways, so many hardships, but you are here. So remember this. You are here. And what is the message that you want to leave? Not for you, not just for the future, but for other people too that you walk upon. What is the message you want people to see? So I'm going to pass this around. You're going to add your water to this cup. So we are flowing energy in this room. And we're going to pour libation to this plant. As a Southern tradition, what we do, we honor a plant and we give it to the eldest in the room. And we ask this eldest to take care of this. And remember, this plant holds energy. So as long as the elder takes care of it, we are all in good hands. So we honor the elder in this room. Whoever's the oldest, this plant belongs to you, and we honor you, and we thank you. So I'm going to let the water collect more around the room. For those who have the empty cup, you can bring your plate. There's a plate under the chair. Each plate has a piece of felt, red, different colors. Each color symbolizes different things. Red represents the blood that runs through us. It represents the breath that we breathe. Each stone, seed, bead, these are collected through travel. My people were known for traveling and trading. So we travel from the south all the way to the north. There are places here that's called Alligator Road. It's called Stomp Lane. These names of these streets are from traveling of my people coming this way. Mound builders. Mounds is what my people are known for. This fabric that I'm wearing, I wore this shirt to you, is called patchwork. Patchwork is what Seminole people, the word Seminole means runaway. It's what the Spaniards called us. Our original name was called Yamasi. What happened was other people wrote our stories and cast us as slaves and cast us as different things. So today, I'm here to explain to you, when you see this culture, you see this patchwork, you see this fabric, it represents a people who've been here many, many moons and have traveled and traded with so many dynasties and Vikings. We have mounds that keep this tradition and this information. It keeps our language. That's how we are able to know how and who we are. We have treaties with Spain, we have treaties with China, and this is how we can say how we got certain shades of people in our clans, how we have different tones and language, how some of our language is Hebrew. And how did this happen? So this saying the importance of trade. And today, these stones and these beads represent this idea of traveling and keeping tradition. So there's also a piece of paper. So on one side of the paper, I'm going to ask you to write an ancestor, a name of a person who's passed, who's no longer here, someone that gave you knowledge, that gave you love, that gave you understanding. The reason I stand here in front of you is because of elders. Many of my elders are passing. The people who taught me language, who taught me the drum, who taught me healing, can no longer walk. Some of them are bedbound. So it's up to me to not just hold this healing, not to just hold this language, not to hold these customs, but to share them. Because what happens if we don't, then we'll be erased. So this is important today to remember this person, write their name, and on the other side of the paper, turn it over, write one thing that you want, you desire, you need. Love, education, wisdom. What is that one thing you need? Just write it down on the paper. I'm going to collect that water while you're writing. So now you have your message. So today, I explained to you the importance of a medicine bag. This would be a smaller one, what people would wear around their neck. You're creating a small one. This would be something you would give, if you ever heard of something called a sweat lodge. These are offerings. They were filled with tobacco, cedar, depending on what the sacred herbs are, they would be filled, and we would offer these to the ancestors. So today, you're going to roll your message, and there's a stone. You can keep a stone. You can add a stone to your pouch here. But what you're going to do is wrap the white ribbon around it, and we're going to just keep a keepsake. What we do also something called a giveaway. This would be your giveaway. So when you see this, wherever you're at, this moment you're going to remember. I remember this guy standing in front of us talking all of this to me, but you're going to remember what the ancestors here in this pouch is. The herb, or the seed, or the stone is going to resonate. And this is what the land acknowledgement is about. Bigger than just saying words. It's something that you will keep and remember, and you're able to pass along to others. So at this time, you're going to wrap it as much as you can, and there's a ribbon to hold it together. You're going to tie it as many times as you can. Awesome. Thank you so much. That's what I was looking for. That one there. Thank you so much. Thank you. Okay. Everyone that comes up in a second. Everyone wrapping. This is an eagle feather. Eagle feathers, turkey feathers, hawk feathers, parrot feathers are indigenous to the East Coast here. These feathers is what we believe that brings messages to the Creator. So these feathers are honored. A lot of the time, depending on where you are at in the world, your feather or the feathers you see have a sacred meaning to the ancestors of that place. So if you see a macaw feather, please just remember it has energy. That's what we're talking about here. So this holds energy, and it allows us to allow our message to go on beyond us. So we honor the ground, we honor the heavens, we honor our body, and we honor the earth. So if everyone has their pouch, I'm going to ask you to hold it up with your right hand. I'm going to activate it with a song. This song is an honoring song that honors the earth and honors the ancestors. Ladies and gentlemen, hold your high. We thank you. We ask for travel and mercies. We ask our ancestors to guide us, keep us safe. We ask that this journey is wise, it's fruitful, it's knowledgeful. It creates understanding, and it provides many opportunities for the future. So today we ask the earth, the land, the people, we honor you, we thank you. Wado, 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 wado. Thank you all for being here. Thank you. So, the elders in the room, I ask you to take your plant and keep it in good energy, and may we all be an image, and may we all remind you of the importance of us here today. Wado.
Thank you so much, Dennis, for that. It's super beautiful. I want to invite Amy to come and welcome us for a moment.
Thank you all. Applause. I haven't done anything yet, so that's very generous of you. I know I spoke a little bit earlier. I just want to reiterate on behalf of everyone here at BAM, backstage and administratively, we're very honored to host the Festival Academy. I will say that Mark Russell, who I thought was going to speak before I did, actually made the introduction, even though Juan Pablo Silas was a staff member here. when he went to the Festival Academy a few years ago. So we were aware of it, and but it really is a big difference to have you all here. And I was going to tell a story, but I'm going to save that for maybe the end of the festivities, after everyone's had a couple of drinks and some more food. But mostly, I'm just eager to hear from all of you, and hope that your experience here in Brooklyn will be quite memorable. And don't hesitate to call upon any of us with the BAM badges to answer your questions over the time. Thank you again for coming.
Mark.
Hi, I'm Mark Russell. I'm the festival director of the Under the Radar Festival, which was going to have a very short life, and then it's not. One reason, when I found out that we were possibly canceled, and I walked out of that interview thinking, what about the Atelier? Because we had been trying, Inga and I had been trying to get a New York City Atelier to happen for many years. And I just felt I couldn't let the Atelier down. And I never want to let Inga down, of course, because there's consequences. And so it's a great, I know that you'll get to see a few of our shows, see as many as you can, sneak in, get on waiting lists, or just find the back door. It's a real honor to have the Atelier here. I know what your travel is going to be for the next 7 days. It's going to be amazing. And thank you and welcome from Under the Radar. One thing. I could not have done Under the Radar without two people standing in the back of the room, and that is Tommy Kriegsman of Art Type and Sammy Pine. And Bryn's in there too. Anyway, it's been an amazing project, and that it is very collaborative, and that we've had everyone in New York has been part of making this festival happen, and now you are. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark. That's amazing. So I will also say something. And I want to do it with my desire or wish or whatever next to me. And a lot of that I will say will actually resonate with what Dennis already brought, so there is no coincidences in this life. Sitting here, I want to acknowledge the present moment, you know, the fact that we are all here, that we brought ourselves here, that we made the effort, that we got the permission to travel here. There's a reason for that. This is, I think, a unique gathering of people and, as Danny said, of bodies, of energies, coming from different corners of the world. Many of you are for the first time in New York, maybe for the first time in the US. And many of you are living in very different daily realities. Some of us are going through war as we speak. And some of us are not being present, you know, because of mobility issues and injustice and inequality in the world, as we said before. People from Nigeria, Senegal, Mongolia, Haiti. And some of us are not present today because they broke down and are having a burnout. This atelier has been planned, I believe, for more than 4 years. Interrupted by COVID, by crisis, by, I think, twice cancellation of Under the Radar Festival. And here we are today. And then we got this news in May or June that Under the Radar was no longer supported by the public theater. So the fact that we are sitting here is really special. And I really want to thank Mark and Amy, Bam, and Under the Radar for being so persistent together with us to making this happen. And I think it will be also an amazing case study to see how this festival that exists for more than 70 years has reimagined itself without the support of the public theater. But it also tells a lot about the state of the arts in the US today and in the world. And all of this happening at a burning point in history. I've been feeling kind of lost lately. When one does work inspired to create a more loving and peaceful world and sees the world heading in quite a different direction. I'm a poet and words mean a lot to me, but some words really have lost meaning to me in the last months. As for example, pause, or freedom, or democracy, or human rights. As we speak and gather here, human rights are being violated right at this moment. And dehumanization is taking another scale, generating more polarization than ever in our societies. Driven by power and greed of some. So how do we not fall prey to the dividing language of those who rule the world today? How do we resist? How do we meet within this space as human beings first, instead of nations or flags or the like? What is the other anyway? What we destroy in war is not the imaginary world of others. It is our own world, our own home, the only one we have. We have one earth and we have a choice to destroy it or to take care of it. At times like these, I tend to seek wisdom with some of the great minds of our times, or those who lived before us. I've been listening to Chomsky, to Audre Lorde, to James Baldwin, to the Syrian poet Nizar Qabbani, Arundhati Roy, even to Spinoza, to name only a few. And I think what all those have in common is that they acknowledge the double standards this world is ruled by. That not all human beings are considered equal. That some lives are worth more than others, and that freedom for some means dominating others. Your freedom ends where mine begins. I feel we need spaces where we can listen to each other. I feel the skill of listening is eroding profoundly. By slogans, by easy statements, by social media. Maybe also by our need for protecting what seems sacred to us. Have we become so insecure of our values that we feel they cannot be challenged? I feel we need spaces to pause and reflect. Spaces to reinvent the languages we are using. And words to describe a reality we want to see reflected in the world around us. We need more poets. Any belief we have needs to be able to be challenged. Dialogue is maybe only possible if we acknowledge that we know nothing. That the human experience is something to be lived and experienced, rather than to be framed in concepts and ideas. We all exist of dualities. We are kind until we are cruel. We are loving until we hate. We are understanding until we are dismissive. We are generous until we are selfish. We are all of this. And it is deeply humbling to acknowledge this in ourselves first and foremost, and to observe the choice we have in this. The choice we have to acknowledge simultaneously the suffering in the world and the beauty. The choice we have to recognize our common humanity over anything that is dogmatic. The choice we have for hope, to value life, to recognize our own mortality, to choose creation over destruction. Art festivals are spaces for creation, are spaces for storytelling, for spirituality, for different realities to coexist. Festivals are also spaces for experiment, experiments of living together, of communities, of humanity. And the atelier, the word which refers to the working space of an artist, is a space for creation, for reimagining, for inspiration, and I want to invite you in the next 7 days to use it like this. We need these spaces where we can expand our views, where we can embrace pluralism, where we can experience life, care, and everything that is dear to us. Arundhati Roy writes, "If there is any hope for the world at all, it does not live in climate change conference rooms or in cities with tall buildings. It lives low, down on the ground, with its arms around the people who go to battle every day to protect their forests, their mountains, and their rivers, because they know that the forests, the mountains, and the rivers protect them." Festival makers are also living down to the ground, among people, and what lives in them. We need to return to the earth, to our rivers, to our communities, to ourselves, to be reminded of what is truly important for us. And we need to keep our arms around ourselves and each other for the battles we engage in each and every day. Thank you very much. And now I invite a fantastic keynote panel to the stage, which will be facilitated by Yazmany.
Thank you, Inge, for the beautiful words. Panelists, if we could have Kumi, Kihong, Juan Pablo, and Meera, and Thimali go up on the stage, please. As we were thinking about the conversation tonight and really kind of thinking through, gosh, this is the beginning of our journey this week. These are brilliant minds that we've invited to think about how to lead us in the next couple of days. But tonight, really thinking through, the world is changing. There's so much that we're having to adapt to. I would love to have the panelists share a little bit about themselves to begin, and a little bit about their thoughts on this title. I'll tell you, the title of the thing itself, to me, feels like 3 different titles. The Power of Festivals in Shifting Harmful Narratives, 1. The Art of Gathering in Times of Conflict, 2. And 3, the need for safeguarding human rights. These are some of the things we're going to be thinking through. But to begin, we'd love to have each of the panelists share a little bit about themselves and their thoughts on this notion. Kumi.
Thank you, Yazmany. Greetings, everyone. I think it's early enough in the new year for us to start by wishing each other a happy new year. And I want to start with a reflection to say that the moment of history that we find ourselves in is one in which there cannot be any space for pessimism. That the pessimism of our analysis and our observation and our lived realities can best be overcome by the creativity of our thought, our action, and our courage. I became an activist at the age of 15. In my first march against the apartheid regime, the slogan at the front of the march was, "We want equality." By the time the slogan got to the back of the march, the younger kids were chanting, "We want a color TV." And if I'm brutally honest, at that age of 15, I wanted a color TV and equality almost equally, and both were equally unattainable. But my journey of activism took me to head up Greenpeace International, Civicus World Alliance for Citizen Participation, and most recently Amnesty International. But I come to you with the realization that we need to do what an African anti-colonial leader said, Amilcar Cabral, when he said we should tell no lies and claim no victories. So I stand before you and say that we must acknowledge that activism currently is failing. We are not winning big enough or fast enough. And so my work has veered into asking the question, what is the biggest challenge we face? And the biggest challenge we face is that we are not able to communicate with the people that matter the most in sufficiently large numbers, the urgency of the moment that we find ourselves in, and to enable spaces for people to feel that they can participate. And key to this is a major error that we make, that we think that the biggest threat we face in the world of activism is the repressive state apparatus, army, police, formal laws. The reality is the biggest threat we face is actually the ideological state apparatus. The framework for education, the framework for religion, the funding of arts and culture, and most importantly, the framework for communications and media. And yeah, you might be shocked to say that I want to pay tribute to Steve Bannon and the brilliance that he and Donald Trump has something to teach us. Okay, I know some of you are just shocked, your stomach is churning, you're about to throw up, but just hang with me. One of the mistakes I believe I have made as an activist for the better part of my life is that most of what I tried to do was aimed at the head. Facts, figures, proposals, policies, rational arguments, and so on. But what you see that Trump and Bannon and that ilk, including Modi in India, Bolsonaro in Brazil, Orban in Hungary, and so on, they say, sorry? CC, yes, yeah. We can all throw names, I guess. And if I might be able, allow me to use a swear word. What these guys have said, fuck their head. Let's go straight for the heart, right? And what they do is they weaponize identity, bring hate, and so on. And it's much easier to move people on the basis of division rather than on the basis of love and unity, which festivals and so on try to bring. So very quickly to say then that a lot of my work right now is with the Community Arts Network, where we are trying to do three things. One is to push forward this idea that we need to energize artivism and to do the kind of artivism diplomacy that gets funders and other powerful players in society to invest much, much more if we're going to break that communications deficit that activism and general efforts at trying to address climate and its intersecting crisis calls upon us to do. And yeah, I would just say that what Martin Luther King said when I was about 6 months old, he said, my friends, as I come to the end of my speech, I want to note in the field of modern child psychology, there's a very dominant term called maladjusted. Now, all of us want to be well-adjusted and not suffer from schizophrenia or other mental illnesses. But my friends, I say to you, there are certain things in our world that are so immoral and unjust that good, decent people should refuse to be well-adjusted to. He goes on to say, I never intend to adjust myself to racial discrimination, religious bigotry, and on the economy. I never intend to adjust myself to economic conditions that will take necessities from the many to give luxuries to the few when millions of God's children are smothering in an airtight cage of poverty in an affluent society. And in a longer version of the speech, he says, I now call upon decent men and women around the world to come together to set up a new international organization that was never set up, to be known as the International Association for the Advancement of Creative Maladjustment, right? And that is about us not accepting the status quo. So let me just end by saying that it's a real honor to be here. A key part of addressing the communications deficit is in fact the power that lies in festivals and other convening opportunities where people come together to create community, and in the beautiful way that Inga said it, so I'm not going to repeat it. But I end with this sentence. Harnessing the full power of arts and culture alone will not deliver us salvation from the climate crisis and the intersecting crisis. However, after more than 4 decades of activism, I am very clear in my mind that without harnessing the full power of arts and culture, we don't stand a chance to reverse the suicidal trajectory that humanity is on. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Kumi. Just to say, for this introductory conversation, I wanted to have everybody be 3 minutes, but we forgive you because we know.
That's why I did
3 minutes. And Mar is going to be our timekeeper, so she's going to be looking at you while giving you 1 minute.
Well, I want to say that I don't think, with the urgency of the conversation, 3 minutes is sufficient. But I want to thank you very much for beginning this new year to talk about hope, to talk about, I think, where we want to move next. And I think I'm looking out in this room, and for me, this is where we're going next. This is, for me, where the future lies. And, I also want to add, in this kind of deficit of communication you talked about, this is now the time to continue to be brave. This is the time now that we continue to be insistent, to protect the spaces that this is why we do what we do. Because the world that we live in right now is shutting out spaces, is shutting down spaces for dialogue, for expression, for conversation, because of fear. Because, I was speaking with an artist about 2 years ago. She was saying to me, we now live in a time of extreme communism because there is no space for any other ideology than the ruling one. The conversations around the right wing, it's not only restricted to the space of politics, but in our everyday lives. You open your TikTok, you open your Instagram, it is very, very clear. If you're not for, you're against. If you indulge me a little bit, I want to share with everyone a statement that Ai Weiwei put out. And I was with him in Cambridge when it all kind of went down, when Ai Weiwei, his presence in the Twitterverse or Xverse, whatever we call it right now, was commenting towards a question about his feelings towards the Israel-Hamas conflict. And this is what he said. I understand that societal behavior, whether at a national, collective, or religious level, cannot be oversimplified. This means we cannot use a simple moral framework to express the so-called correct expression. This raises a crucial question. If we cannot use simple ways to express a complicated question, does that mean expression becomes unnecessary? Or that the so-called incorrect expression becomes unnecessary? This is the fundamental aspect of free expression, a core question. For someone working in art, expression has never been about seeking correct expression. The most fundamental meaning of expression is free expression, expressing as much as possible based on objective facts, often without reaching a conclusion. This is the essence of art making. We shouldn't abandon expression because there is no conclusion. Otherwise, we will be abandoning art, creativity, and creation. In the field of art, when there are forbidden zones, they result in a kind of art that we often see now. It comes from good education, where certain expressions are favored and others are discarded. Without free expression, the foundational existence of art and expression will be in peril. Hence, we often see artworks that lack depth related to the human condition and soul. They become merely decorative, with mediocre thinking serving as a form of consoling and entertaining content. When discussing correctness or wrongness, I must be wrong. I have always regarded free expression as a value most worth fighting for and caring about, even if it brings me various misfortunes. My father, as a poet, suffered unfair treatment, detainment, labor reformation, and almost lost his life simply because of his attitude. If he had lost his life, I would not exist. In my opinion, all kinds of opinions can be expressed, even when they are not correct. Incorrect expressions or opinions should be especially encouraged. If free expression is limited to the same kind of opinions, it becomes an imprisonment of expression. Freedom of expression is about different voices. Voices different from ours. Simply put, we have never lived in a society with freedom of expression, but rather in a society where speech is not cherished. And individual speech is not deemed important or acceptable by controllers of speech. When I was growing up, my family was considered anti-revolutionary and anti-party, not because we did anything anti-revolutionary or anti-party, but because controllers of speech did not allow opinions and thinking different from their own. This situation prompted someone doing art like me to think that I don't have anything to lose. Nothing I can lose would be worse than losing freedom of speech, the most precious gift from the world. I'm going to skip ahead. While it exists or not, it's not important because there would always be someone who wants to look for light and the joy that light brings to life, as people do not like darkness. Without exaggeration, a person or an artist I can live without doing an art exhibition, and I can live without art as a space of expression. But I cannot live without free thinking and free speech. This would mean the end of life. So I think in some sense, this is perhaps, this 7 days is that space to expand, really to think about why we are doing what we're doing. That as the title suggests, that festivals, it's where you change dangerous narratives. So I ask you to remain brave, to remain insistent, to protect spaces to allow for this freedom of speech and freedom of thinking. Thank you.
Wow, it's very tough to follow these two. My name is Meera Dugal, and I am the co-founder of Habibi Festival, and also I work on the performing arts portfolio at the Mellon Foundation. Outside of those, I identify as a super helpful fan, and my career is grounded in trying to be helpful to the artists that I love with whatever tools I happen to have at my disposal that day. The reason why I love festivals, I think the thing that we all have in common here is my festival is one for music from the Swana region. And always in my performing arts career, I've been drawn to festivals for the unique world that we get to build for one night, 1 week, however long it is, the visionaries we get to appoint to gather around, and the community that we get to build in that moment, gathered around a shared idea, and also in a space of suspended reality where we get to come together in a very ancient sort of feeling, in a ritual sort of feeling, and one that centers play and one that centers experience over product, and one that is inviting to an artist in their totality and not just whatever art form they happen to be presenting. It's a gathering of ideas that sometimes takes the shape of dance or music or whatever it is. But to me, I love it because it's moments where we get to imagine and live in the world that we would love to be living in 365. So Habibi Festival, we've just finished our 3rd year, so we're young, and I have very much to learn from everybody in this room tonight. But it was started because my co-founder, Yassine Bolaris, and Alex Knowlton, the director of Joe's Pub, we love music from this region, and even in a place as omnivorous as New York, there was no space for amplifying the Swana artists who are here locally, the diaspora community, and also to create more mobility and awareness of artists from that region to have an existence in New York, and then, hopefully across the country. My first gig out of school was working with Global Fest, and I attribute a lot of my motivation in this work to what I learned from them, which is the cultural diplomacy aspect of it all, the power of one beautiful, intimate, immediate connection with an artist from a region or a concept that feels so abstract, and then when you hear the folk song, the lullaby, the contemporary sounds of that region, it becomes real, and it's like an act of alchemy to experience in a room ideas and headlines and people and countries becoming real and immediate in real time, and that is an act of magic that keeps me going to art at every chance that I get. And through that experience, and unfortunately, we have to, constantly be humanizing people. The act of dehumanization is one that we're witnessing at all times, and it's bizarre to say that I wake up and have to humanize, or I'm trying to humanize something with my work. It shouldn't be what we have to do, but that is one of the goals of Habibi Festival, and it feels, more urgent than ever. And I will say that from my new life working on the philanthropy side of things and the crazy power dynamics that exist in this realm, I do have the privilege to be working on the music portfolio, and my particular goal is to do more research into festivals and the unique way that they move our arts ecosystem forward and the way that they are able to work outside of broken institutions and broken governments and democracies and countries where the traditional ways of doing things were not serving the artists and the people in the way they should. Festivals have a nimbleness and a convening power that is incredibly important to an active and civic society. So that is something that I want to be speaking to all of you about after this and throughout the week, of how I can be of service to you in the ways that you're trying to convene community, and how we can, empower more of the artists in our world to actually be the visionaries and the leaders that they're meant to be, and how we can amplify that and support them with all of the power that we have in this room.
Hello, my name is Juan Pablo Lopez. I'm the artistic director of the Dance Biennale in Cali, in Colombia, and also the programming director in the new choreographic center, La Licorera, also in Cali. Thank you very much for the Festival Academy for this kind invitation. I hope this week will be a very inspirational meeting for everyone. I do not speak English fluently, but Yazmany will help me if I need traduction. Cali, my beloved city, could be a paradise because it is a summer city, 12 months of a year, capital of salsa and sports, gastronomic destination, 2 hours from sea, and in a valley of sugarcane. But the level of drugs traffic, the cartel, and violence made it one of the most dangerous cities in the world in the 18th and 19th. For this reason, when I started to work in the cultural field around 23 years ago, I know I must work to change this image since my possibilities. I work in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, the Ministry of Culture, the French Alliance, and the Colombian Embassy in Paris. And finally, I created a festival of dance that became the Dance Biennale of Cali in 2013, the biggest dance festival in Colombia nowadays. For us, as a festival, being an agent of change was not an option. It was what we should do, work with the community, with the new generation, searching for the new language of Colombian dance, respecting our bodies in a society that mutilates and murders daily. How to achieve it? Trusting in our artists, providing them with decent budgets for their works, generating accessible training spaces for dancers and choreographers, opening spaces for dialogue so that our program truly is a program that makes into account the interests of our community, inspires them, confronts them, and leads them towards other aesthetics that increasingly resemble those they have dreaming of themselves. In Colombia, more than 18% of the dancers in the country are dancers of folk dances. Cumbia, bullerengue, curulao, joropo, among other national dances. In our case, the easiest thing will be having to create a folklore festival, but it was not our vocation. In a country that danced, if dancers did not know each other personally or artistically, there was no dialogue, and the national budget for dance was always the lowest. This is why it was necessary to create a platform for intergenerational connection that brought together various genres of dance with a multidisciplinary vision in a connection with other readings of the body in the contemporary universe. We have already had 6 editions. The last one was in the last November. More than 400,000 people who attended. And it was really necessary in Colombia that space for confrontation and encounter to lead more move forward, to let go, allow impossible dialogues, and not worry about setting boundaries or labels in a climate of respect and always fight for injustice and surging the peace in our country. Thank you.
Don't worry, I'll have a go at 3 minutes. Best for last, obviously. Thanks, everyone. My name is Thimali, Kodikara. I make a podcast, produce and host a podcast. It's on feminist solutions to the climate crisis. And we are focused on the work of mostly black and brown and indigenous women and girls all over the world, and how they are problem solving the climate crisis from the front lines. Because who better to ask than the people who are actually living it? You'd be surprised how controversial that is. It's very nice to be in a room with you all, because I don't get to see the people I talk to. We're making a podcast. I've literally made the podcast in my underpants in the kitchen during the pandemic, which is controversial because my co-host is the former president of Ireland, Mary Robinson, and a comedian called Maeve Higgins, who's actually based in New York, as am I. So we are actually 3 seasons in. Funnily enough, Kumi predates me being on the show. He was in the inaugural season, and I actually only took over in season 2, so it's really nice to be here with Kumi. The most recent man we had on was Bernie Sanders, but we've only had 5 men. You have to be really, really high caliber if you're going to be on the show, obviously. So, yeah, we've spoken to women, girls, and genderqueer folks from Colombia, from Palestine, from Indonesia, from tiny island nations off the coast of Papua New Guinea. And so we use this as an opportunity to sort of crowdsource alternate realities for an audience that's dominantly global north. And, you know, we are educating people on the climate crisis, but really the sub-narrative is black and brown and indigenous women and girls and genderqueer people have extreme talent, creativity, and intellect, and we really need to humble ourselves to this kind of knowledge and information. But also, on Mothers of Invention, we, as a feminist, as a show focused on intersectional feminism, we can afford to talk about things like love as a problem-solving tool for democratic crises and the climate crisis. Never in my life have I seen a more blatant need for intersectional feminist leadership. And that is not for some time in the future, that is for the year 2024. And that is what we're going to continue pursuing. We have all been forced to live in and accept this very oppressive, patriarchal society that really keeps us all very captive to violence, various forms of violence. But the challenge, I think, is for right now to remember our capacity for unconditional love. Where has it gone? How did it become so condescended and disregarded? Capitalism, which we talk about a lot on the show because we have a lot of indigenous folks on the show, we talk about colonization as the instigator of the climate crisis. Capitalism, which maintains the climate crisis, has taught us to be so segregated from one another and to compete for time and resources and energy. But what you all are doing and what festival environments do for us that I can't do on the podcast even, is implicitly counter that narrative by introducing this counter to emotional and spiritual oppression that we're all under. It's extremely special, and everyone can feel it. You can feel the expansiveness and safety of being in a room of tens or hundreds of or thousands of people who carry the same feeling or ethos as you. So I mean, audiences entering into a space with a will to be educated or re-educated or enter into an alternate reality is your task at hand. It's extraordinary. You have the opportunity to present people with primary sources of information, first-hand stories at a time where we are being gaslit by our political leaders, our business leaders, our mainstream media, that you can put stories of real people in front of audiences, and that is amazing and critical. So yeah, I want to, I hope that we can remind our audiences that we still possess this capacity to experience and express love. I don't believe that we can problem solve bigotry by educating ourselves out of the problem. I believe that friendship is really the ultimate way to do it. I've seen it. I've been face to face with many white supremacists. They find me in hotel lobbies, on planes, but ultimately I'm able to change their mind because they've never met somebody like me before. And I'm adorable. That's true. But I mean, can we inspire our audiences, our festival goers, to embody feminine power? That's where our community comes from. It's where our sense of creativity comes from. It's where eternal growth comes from. So a beloved friend of mine who also was a guest on the show in season 3, Vivian Sansour, she is the founder of the Palestinian Heirloom Seed Library. She's protecting heirloom seeds to that land in the West Bank from being run into extinction because of settler colonialism. And she messaged me recently and just said, there is no freedom without love, and that is the essence of it all.
Thank you, Thimali. And thank you all. If this was 3 minutes, we're going to be here till midnight. Hope you're ready. But really getting into the conversation, so much has been changing. Thank you so much for giving us a little bit of context. When I think about the art of gathering and Priya Parker's work, I think about the notion of what she centers at the beginning of the book is the purpose of why we gather. I would love to hear from some of you, if you feel inspired, how has the purpose of why we gather people been changing over the last few years? What have you noticed? When you think about the purpose of bringing people together, how has that been shifting over I guess, since the pandemic, over the past 5 years? What comes forward for you?
In a lot of my work, and in many conversations with artists that I work with, we've already stopped talking about making projects. We've stopped talking about an artwork per se, but more in the space of what does a movement look like. In some sense, during the time of the pandemic, it was the only moment in my life that I had space to think about things, to reflect and to think about why are we where we are. During the pandemic, it was so crystal clear to me that working in the arts, we're super vulnerable. In any kind of crisis, whatever you can name it, when a crisis happens, let's cut the arts. Yeah? But ironically, in times of crisis, people turn to the arts. Not because of just about inspiration, but because it enters in a space of connection, of human-to-human connection. I think we've talked a lot about it since the beginning today, this morning. And so in some sense for me, the kind of gathering, I think for me now, we have to rethink and reimagine what does assembly look like. When I was working in Hong Kong, I lived through both the revolution process, the umbrella movement, as well as the 19 shit show, whatever you want to call it, that led to the unfolding of many things. And it was so apparent to me that, you know, when we make festivals, we invite people together in the theaters, in the galleries, in the whatever halls. But I think now the conversation is about together in a very different way, together for a very different purpose. And thank you for talking about gathering, because love, it's not a silly thing. Because now, working in the arts, what if we shift from the idea of transactional relationships, right? As a curator, we invite an artist, we commission a work, it's transaction. But a lot of my indigenous friends have taught me, what if we shift the relationship from being transactional to being relational? What does being a family look like? A family means it's for life. It's about radical care. It's about in spaces of support and care that when the structures fail you, you know that you've got your back covered. So I think for me to think about assembly, of coming together, of this gathering, this is the point of the moment that perhaps we can think about the failures of capitalism, not to try to solve it. It's not my fucking problem to save capitalism. It's my issue to find some other solution with some other group of people that have never been at the table, that who are not in the room today. So I always ask the first question, who is not in the room? There are many people not in the room. Why are they not here?
Maybe I can just add one other, just that was beautiful and I fully endorse that. The other thing where purpose has shifted in the last decade for me is seeing as the climate crisis has got worse and worse and worse, and we seem more and more unable to actually get on top of it, that we are seeing just an explosion of new actors, new players, especially in the arts and culture field more broadly, who are actually saying we're not waiting for mainstream activists to give us leadership, we're going to take leadership right now. And I think that's been a very positive thing that I've seen. I mean, you know, whether it's in the Pacific where people from the different islands kind of were doing this boat dance almost, you know, where they connected from vast distances and so on. You know, it might be invisible to the mainstream media, but I think that there is an explosion of activity that is happening. And while I see quite a few people looking a bit down, because whenever somebody talks about the climate crisis, it's an existential crisis, and therefore purpose is challenged in a very fundamental way. Even, for example, with festivals, how do we make our festivals less harmful in terms of, you know, emissions and all of that? But in the spirit of what I said earlier, that pessimism is a luxury that we simply cannot afford in this moment of history, I thought I should just say that there is some good news in the conversation around climate. And that is often you would hear people like myself saying, save the planet, save the climate, save the environment. The good news is the planet actually does not need saving. Because if we continue on the trajectory that we're on, the end result is we warm up the planet that we cannot grow food, we destroy our water, we destroy our soil, it gets too hot to survive. We will be gone. The planet actually will still be here. The good news is once we become extinct as a species, the forests will recover, the oceans will replenish, everything will sort itself out. So let's be very clear that the purpose that is called upon us in wherever we find ourselves in is to recognize that the struggle to avert catastrophic climate change is nothing more and nothing less than us showing genuine love and care for our children and their children's future. Thank you.
I was just going to add a little bit because I didn't really know anything about climate change when I took over the show, because I thought that climate change was a white folks issue. through and through. Because that is also how it was being presented in mainstream media. And it wasn't until I started digging into the subject more through my research that I was like, holy cow, this is a Black and brown and indigenous global South issue first and foremost. But I had to go to the issue myself in order to find that out. So fora where we can actually, where there are more opportunities to connect the dots, because I'll literally sit in a diner and that poor person next to me is going to be talking, learning everything about colonialism and the climate crisis. So any opportunity we can have to talk about and connect dots for people and contextualize the climate crisis for people is really important. But also, I was going to say to Ki Hong's point as well, in terms of shifting opinion around things, when people are quite trapped by conditioned ideas, I find that it's usually because they are afraid of being rejected from their family or their culture or something about their environment. And when they're extracted from that environment and put into a different space where they, again, are exposed to alternate realities, you have an enormous opportunity to change someone's mind. And again, a festival will do that in a way that telly's not going to do that, film can't do that. Like actually bringing people into a space where they can have a totally different experience in a safe way is extremely powerful. So I just want to add that too.
Thank you. When we think about all the things that are happening in the world, all the adaptation, change, to go back and think through, gosh, how are people adapting? How are people who are gathering folks and creating spaces of communion changing and shifting to deal with the current realities? What examples come forward for you for adaptation?
I want to answer the last question a little. Sorry, but is that I think we value meeting together much more nowadays, of course. But for example, in my case, in Colombia, for the Biennale, we travel to all the time to parts of the country that are very dangerous with the guerrilla, I don't know, yeah. Guerrilla, and was dangerous, but for us was very important because, for example, the Urabá Antioqueño is in the north of the country, are the best dancers now in Colombia. And was very important to present these groups in the Biennale and give the space, to be known for the big public in our country. And for us, always value this meeting, with the other is very important to be open for us to travel also to these very dangerous places. And some of the dancers of Urabá Antioqueño are part of Sankofa. Sankofa Dance Afro is one of the biggest, most important companies in Colombia now. They will present it in the Joyce Theater next February. If you have the opportunity, please go to see, because it's Afro-contemporary group that talks about the violence, that talks about the racism, that is in this part of the country. And I think the meeting and the value of being together for us is very, very important always, but of course nowadays more. It's just to say that.
I'll just share with you all that when I hear him speak, because I'm Colombian from Medellin, from the Andes, I have such enormous pride hearing you talk about that festival, because when I was 11 years old, my father was assassinated in Colombia, and 2 of my uncles were kidnapped and tortured to death. And my family had to hide in the mountains for 2 months. And when I think about coming to the United States and people saying, oh, Colombia, drugs or kidnappings, I say, sure, that's true. But my mother's humor and the light that I bring with me wherever I go, that comes from my artistry, is also as true. And so much of what I think about when I think about festivals and their success is the pluralizing of ideas, that it's not just like, this is the one narrative. How do we multiply more narratives? How do we adapt to really understand there's billions of ways of being in the world, and celebrating and honoring all of the things we have yet to understand? So thank you, Juan Pablo, for your story and for the work you do.
Just on that idea of adaptation, I think one of the ideas that Habibi is really committed to is to combat sort of the mummification of a lot of these regions and these cultural forms as petrified in amber, as traditions that are not inherently absorbing influences and evolving at all times. So that idea of adaptation and giving space for something ancient to continually present with a new face, even though it's a really ancient seed that could be hundreds of years old, these traditions that come from a long indigenous history that we never know about because maybe we first engaged with this form as a sample in somebody else's song. But giving room for ancient ideas and ancient ways of operating to still have a place in the way that we operate now, whether it's by process or by the creative performances that we share. I think it's important to give ourselves that flexibility to always be looking back and looking forward at the same time. And that is a value that I uphold in the artists that I'm engaged with and those who I'm drawn to. But it's also something that I constantly have to remind myself to embody in my own way of working. And to go back to the question about adaptation too, in terms of how have I seen parts of the field adapt, I'm only 6 months into my journey in philanthropy, but the reason why I knew it was going to work at the foundation, at the Mellon Foundation, where I work, is the energy of the space right now, specifically on the performing arts team, is one, to divest in sort of the stodgy, predominantly white institutions that have historically always been receiving all of this money, and acknowledge that those institutions and large performing arts centers or orchestras or companies who have upheld the status quo in really harmful, violent ways, to shift the support into infusing artists with the power to wield a sword over the ecosystem, to say, you need to bow down to me, and I have the resources to bring this idea to life, and here is the way that I want to work with you. So to see a shift on the philanthropy side of investing more specifically in individuals who are building new systems for touring, because that's totally broken, or, building new festivals specifically to create the space that they need as artists to engage in risk-taking and collaboration without the constraints of institutions, and to fight against that subsidizing of the community work that institutions and art spaces have a mandate to be in their community, to say, if you're not doing it, we're going to give it to the artists who are, and they're now going to have power over you in this ecosystem to right the scales towards, equity and actually making artistic spaces serve the role that they're supposed to in society.
Great, thank you. When we think about all the folks showing up to participate in these festivals and gatherings, often, as somebody mentioned earlier, we're there to listen to music, see theater, experience visual art. How do we turn all of those participants into actively engaged people who are dealing with social justice and other aspects of the fabric of democracy that are so critical to move us forward? Do you think that there's a responsibility in the crafting of these spaces that needs us to go the extra mile and really get folks to understand that their actions will transform the earth? Are there examples of that? Can you share a little bit about, yeah.
So Mothers of Invention is an impact media project, which means I develop editorial strategy and social justice impact strategy, and those two things have to intersect. So I'm basically trying to find stories and guests who can help me on the front end get the audience to get their butts off seats and take action, And then on the back end, I'm finding opportunities for every single guest that we've had on the show to platform their work. Because you would be surprised how few BIPOC women, Global South folks, are actually integrated into the climate sector. So we've sort of become accidentally an agency where I've had people call me saying, we had no idea there were women of color that worked in the climate sector. Can you connect me with so-and-so? So there's power, I think, not just on the audience side, but also your guest side and being able to have people commune with one another. I spoke at a wonderful festival in Colorado called Original Thinkers, and it was really oriented around that too, is trying to get the guests to actually work with one another as well. And I feel like I gained friends for life, community for life, and I've collaborated with some of those people since, actually. On the front end with the audience, it's a lot harder, and I can't lie how much harder it is. And I have 5 years of insights at this point. But it is challenging because I can't see my audience. The best metrics I have are downloads, subscribers, like very cold clinical kind of numbers. I can get a general sense of where they live in the world, but I don't know what actions they're taking, even though I'm writing content that is specifically around direct action as well as around education. So it is challenging, but and you will have to develop strategy as well as accommodate organic outcomes. But I think, you know, it's active work. You're going to have to keep adapting and learning as you go. And I obviously work in the climate crisis and have to take the cultural zeitgeist of the year that we're producing that season into account before I even go into production. So all of those things are constantly shifting, and you're going to have to shift with it. But there's so much to learn and grow from with that.
I think in a festival, for example, in Colombia, it's important to give the face to the conflict. I don't know if and in our case, we invite, how I say, now groups for the different regions of the country. This year, we make a project that the name was Emerging Bodies with a university, with the Jorge Tadeo Lozano, that is one of the renowned universities in Colombia. And this project was a call for groups in the south side, in the Pacific area. Cali is situated in the south, in the Pacific, and the idea was to give grants for the groups in this place. But some of these places, like Tumaco, was also, like Urabá Antioqueño, was in a very dangerous zone. And we went in August to see the groups, to talk with the people, with the choreographers. We chose the groups. One of the groups was Pacific Dance. In August, the work was incredible, but when arrived in November, we received the news that before the Biennale, that 2 of the dancers was killed. And that is very difficult situation, of course, but this is the reality of the groups. No, of course, we support. Of course, we make all we help also with all to give the group before the presentation, to put safe also the other dancers, but is the reality, you know. And I think this is a way also to say to the society, you know, what happened and how arts are important, you know, to change, agents of change, of these difficult and sad situations. But I think is to be honest and to understand that you must be very, how do you say that, empathic, with what happened in your territory, and also with the respect for the communities and the respect in this case for the dancers. I give the space, I give the opportunity, I give the voice.
I just want to add that for our festival, it happens at Joe's Pub every year, and that's a room of 100-ish people. And so I'd say half the audience know the band that they're coming to. They're maybe part of the Swana diaspora in New York, and they're going to sing along with some of the music, and they're invested in a way that the other half, who is there for the frenzy of the festival concept, they maybe don't know who the exact artists are, but they're excited about what it stands for, and they're excited about something new. And the power of that immediacy of hearing from the horse's mouth the music, the folk tales, the making real of what's happening on the reality of the ground for these places, there is a personal connection that they can claim as their own source of truth. And, our festival had a lot of Moroccan artists, for example, and it was right after the Moroccan earthquake. And so, that was part of our festival too. You have a direct connection. The QR code was to the friend of the musician who's doing their own mutual aid on the ground. And there's this extremely immediate link that grows from these tiny, beautiful, intimate connections. And like those tiny moments are shooting like a repair to the emotional ozone. Like those are the moments that are actually going to foster change. And I think that one of the other things that is so beautiful about some of the things that happen at a festival is one of the festivals that I've loved and I've gone to a million times is the Gnawa Festival in Essaouira, which is one of my favorites. And I've been able, from my New York perch, and also from what I've studied of this genre, is that this festival has also re-energized this entire art form that is now having a second life. It's UNESCO protected, and there's a whole generation of new artists, young artists, who are taking pride in this art form again because of the attention that this festival has galvanized around this thing. There's a cultural pride for it. There is a different cultural touch point to this country now that is like from 0 to 60. You hear this word and it's from there, and it has this huge cachet on an international stage that's going to reinvigorate a new generation of artists who want to take on this tradition that maybe felt like the weird thing their elders were doing, but now has the power to live on in so many new forms. So the audiences, the way that they eat and digest the change could show up immediately because they can donate to this thing, or now they have a Palestinian artist that they saw at the festival and they're like, now I understand the conflict from this perspective, and now I can go to Bay Ridge and fight next to them because I have a connection to it. But some of these seeds I'm not going to see in my lifetime, hopefully, and I'm excited about that.
Thank you. I think one of the changes that we need if we're going to enable people to rise to participation is, firstly, those of us that are in different kinds of leadership have to trust people more. And we have to actually recognize the immense power that resides in people. If I look at my involvement in mainstream activism, in organizations like Greenpeace and Amnesty and so on, when we go to the public, we go there not inviting people to come into the conversation in a co-creation kind of way. We go to them saying, we know what's right, this is what you need to do on this, this is a policy on that, and so on. And I think we need to shift that. And arts and culture allows us the best way to do it, to equalize voice, to equalize perspective. The other thing that we have to shift is not, people who know me well will be surprised about what I'm about to say, but not to be in the face of the people that we're trying to shift, right? And maybe I'll just give you an example. On Earth Day this year, there's a new initiative that's going to be launched globally called Sounds Right. Sounds Right is led by UN Live Museum for the United Nations, on whose board I serve as a volunteer. And what this initiative is going to do, and it's been working for the last year, is getting musicians across the world to use the sounds of nature in their songs, right? Waterfalls, waves, birds, and so on. And so I understand Beyonce, for example, has signed up to it, right? So let's say Beyonce produces something with music in it. it'll say Beyonce featuring nature, and if the sounds of birds was used 3% of the song, then 3% of the proceeds of the song are going to go into a fund to actually then support the biodiversity efforts of indigenous peoples. Now, to be honest, it's not so much about the fundraising aspect of it. And by the way, just to note that nature actually is the first original cultural performer, if you actually think about it, right? But what it is, the mentality there is two things. One is meeting people where they are. If 2 billion people are on music streaming platforms, it's up to us to go to where people are, meet them in a language and a tone. The tone actually has to shift. It cannot be a tone that those of us who are inviting you to get more involved is that we have arrived at the absolute truth and we know the answers to everything. We have to embrace this notion of emergence, which is, as we sit here, we all might know that we need to, on climate, reduce carbon emissions, say. But exactly how we do it step by step and so on, nobody can say I'm sitting with a perfect full blueprint on it. And to invite people in a way that you're not asking them simply to be foot soldiers, but you're asking them to be genuinely part of the solution, I think is critically necessary to change the dynamic. Because and maybe the last thing just to say, you mentioned it already, I think we must not underestimate the rise of fascism that we're seeing. It predates Trump's election, but Trump's election just gave it a big boost. I can tell you that when I was Secretary General of Amnesty, every third country I went to, people said to me, oh, by the way, do you know Steve Bannon was here a couple of months ago, right? So this is a global kind of thing, right? And so what we are seeing is a shrinking of democratic space, a shrinking of civic space. It's happening everywhere. And therefore, we should not underestimate the power of festivals, of other arts and cultural interventions that might offer us the cover to convene people. Right? During the anti-apartheid struggle, for example, if we organize a rock concert, right, which we did, the word for party in South Africa, anybody knows who's not South African? Jol, okay? So for example, we would do a rock concert, like a festival, and the theme would be Jol to involve, right? But it wasn't, everybody kind of who came to it knew what it was about, but it was not so in your face that state repression could shut it down. And the guitar on the poster, right, where the thing is, would have a fist. Everything had to be a bit more subtle. So in many countries around the world today, where we're seeing massive shrinking of political space, arts and culture is going to give us a more subtle way to make people feel brave enough to say, I need to do something, I need to stand up. And if we think that conventional ways of doing it is going to help, then we are kidding ourselves.
Thank you, Kumi. The word that stuck out as I was listening to Kumi speak is the word trust. I will tell you that I'm a part of the Civic Engagement Commission in my work in the city of New York, and that it's the only city agency that has the sentence that in its charter, it's meant to build trust to help democracy survive. And when I showed up in 2020 during the pandemic, during all of the different protests for black brutality and police killing people in America that shouldn't be killed, the question that I was trying to answer was, gosh, how do I invite people to know that this agency exists and that it's meant to build trust? And the thing that I thought about all the time was, gosh, how do you build trust? By asking for help, by being vulnerable, by being open to say, hey, we actually need money and we need to think about ideas of how we gather people. The project that came up from the work that I was doing then is called the People's Bus. We took a bus from Rikers Island, from a prison, and we transformed it into a community center made of 8.8 million beads to represent 8.8 million New Yorkers. And I will tell you that a huge part of the work was inviting people to imagine we could do this. Is this possible? And so the invitation alone became this grand invitation to be like, wait, we're gonna do this? Do we need $1? Do we need more people to help us figure out how to tell the story? All of these elements eventually became how you build trust. It's like, hey, what can we do and how do we do it? Literally, this week, we're going to be working through who are we here in this room and what possibilities can we imagine together that we cannot imagine alone. That is the work that we're here to do. And because we've been feeding our brains so much, I want to invite your toes into the room. If you can just wiggle them a little bit. Be like, hello, you're here too. Thank you, thank you. I want to make space, about 15 minutes, for an open questions for folks who want to ask questions. And we'll pass this microphone. Oh, there's a microphone that's going to be passed around.
I think we have to.
Great.
Yeah. Well, thank you all for the lovely speeches, the lovely comments, everything, and yeah. Everything that you said, all of you, was just like so meaningful and so easy to speak about. But honestly, on the ground, it's not easy. And everyone in this room, everyone participating here, is a privilege. And we're not even close. At the end, we speak to ourselves. We meet ourselves. We bump into each other in other countries. But what do we do actually to move forward and to help those who are actually at risk? Either festivals, artists, audiences, because there's a lot happening that we don't know on the ground, and we just, well, I'm not gonna say that we just speak that would be sound a little bit snob and it's just like undermining, but still we're not even close of what is actually happening in reality. And there's a lot of people, even in my country, even right now, I don't know, I'm privileged. A lot of people are less privileged than I am. I'm here right now. I know that there are a lot of artists that actually are in jail back in Egypt. There are artists that actually are running out of being bumped right now while we're speaking. So what do we do to help those people at risk actually within actual steps, if there are any? Yeah, sorry. I have another comment, and this is a personal statement, to be honest. And it's just like, because Thimali, I pronounce it right, yeah, okay, cool. And this is a very personal observation of what is happening in this world and all the sickness that we are living in, is actually, it all started by labeling. Because everything we talk about right now is just like about white, brown, black, Jewish, Muslim, Christian, and everything. And this is what started everything in the first place, labeling all that. And subconsciously, and because we got used to it, this is actually how we speak in the first place, by labeling the first one that's in front of us. And maybe this is something we could think about. Thank you.
Hi. Again, thank you for all that you said. I'm Rewa, I'm from Lebanon. I do have a couple of things and on maybe suggestions on what Hazem said that I feel like from the beginning of this gathering, we're all, well, everyone who spoke said of what is happening today, but nobody said what is happening today. Like, obviously I know what's happening, but it would assume that everyone in the room knows. Like, why are we not saying that there is a genocide? I'm sorry, it's not a conflict. So that would be the first step, I would say, into shifting harmful narratives, is when you start saying what is happening. I'm not saying this is the news, but say the words, like, because I still feel like there's some fear in this room. I don't know, like maybe the upcoming
No,
from,
I mean, I welcome, one of the things that we want to really practice as we move through every day of being together is the modeling of questioning language and words and meaning. And one of the things that we're doing tomorrow together is really defining how we talk and how do we address each other in a way with care, but with honesty. And please, as we move through it, I will be self-correcting and I'm moving through the questioning of my own words in modeling this. And so across all of the spaces that we occupy together, my hope is that we're continuously questioning the words we're using, what they mean, and how we're communicating. Because I think, as you were saying, Kumi, earlier, the piece of how do we communicate? The question of communication alone is critical in how we tell stories. I don't know if any of the panelists have some of the reflections around actionable ways forward to supporting the harm that is happening in the world right now.
I want to share that one of the partners that has made some of this work possible for Habibi is the Artistic Freedom Initiative that I highly recommend you all check out. And they do incredible work with legal resettlement for artists who are at risk. And in the recent years, they've also created a festival. They've also created residencies and opportunities for placement for artists at risks in New York with places like Westbeth Artist Housing, with placements at universities across the country. They've just lost their Westbeth thing, which was like a year-long subsidized housing that they would fully cover for artists to stay for a year. And so, we're looking for people with space in New York and across the country who want to be partners with Artistic Freedom Initiative to house and home and receive these artists who are coming. So that is a resource that I would love to share with all of you. And Habibi has been a partner with them by employing their artists throughout our festival, either on stage or in, pop-up concerts around the festival. But it's just showed us that our job as curators is so much further beyond just bringing them to our festival. With the networks and the power that we have, we need to find more opportunities for legal support, for resettlement support, for actually supporting them as humans who need mental health support when they arrive. All of the 360 needs that an artist has, we are looking out for those, even though you see them as just being on our stage that one night. We have every desire and have been trying to use all the tools at our advantage to support the 360 of what some of these artists need, starting from, being a petitioner for their visas. So please check out AFI. And if anyone has space, that's always a need, especially here in New York. So I would love to hear about it.
What's your name? Yeah.
Riwa.
Nice to meet you. I just wanted to say that, I really hope that you don't feel gaslit by this panel. And for me, it's absolutely, without question, there is a genocide happening in Palestine. There's been apartheid that has led to genocide and ethnic cleansing in Gaza. So I'm really sorry if you felt that way, respectfully. I will say also, as somebody that gets a lot of emails to participate in festivals, I turn down a lot of festival invitations because I look at the panel lineup and it's all white folks trying to talk about climate justice. Why? Why does this happen? It's really so strange. Because it also sort of continues this idea of anthropologizing Black and brown stories, which is super creepy when you can just ask them to do it themselves. So I often turn down speaking engagements when it's an all-white panel or all men. When we're talking about climate, we really need to see women. We need to see Black and brown indigenous women. We need to see young people. If that is not present, then I really don't see the point of the conversation. So I don't know what your programming is, but that is something to think about. often I will get a response back saying, "Oh my goodness, we hadn't really thought about it. Thank you so much." And I'm like, okay. You know, unnamed human rights organization that is in New York City. Like, why don't you know any of these people? And then I will get asked if I know people. And I'm like, well, yeah, I know people, but why don't you know people? And you can pay me to a BIPOC finder's fee to produce your event for you. You know, like, come on, you've got to do more research, more thinking, like engage in the issue and stop handing this work over to vulnerable people. We can't just be hypothetically wanting to advocate for indigenous people and then not paying them, you know? Like, especially when it's like, you know, we talked about this earlier, I get tokenized all the time to come and be on a panel as a woman or as a melanated woman of color. But nobody wants to really listen to what I have to say. My position is one that has come from hustle, suffering, and intellect. That's why I'm here. So you need to credit and you need to pay people adequately if you are trying to change the hearts and minds of tens or hundreds or thousands of people attending your festival out of respect, you know. Again, these aren't hypothetical things. These are practical actions you can take. So.
No, I'm there with you that it's genocide. Yeah? And I also want to say that this genocide has gone on for far longer, and not just in Palestine, in indigenous spaces, Syria, Ukraine, Afghanistan, Iraq, all of it.
Armenia.
Exactly, all of it. And I think, you know, what is important to think about genocide is also, at the same time, we must not be complicit to the silencing. You know, I mean, you asked about, as festivals, what should we do? I mean, we talk about solidarity all the time. But in many ways, solidarity is easy. You just say it, right? It's no different for me in a TikTok you like, or there is no difference. So the question is, how do you continue to be able to create this space, to allow the presence of these artists in what you do? We've had this conversation very recently internally in an organization, because it's urgent, yeah? A lot of Palestinian artists have been silenced. They've been exhibition, whatever's been cancelled left, right, and center. People are pulling out. People are afraid to talk. They're afraid to name, as what you said. So the urgency is then perhaps to not shy away from this naming, but to allow for this presence to happen. So obviously there are even more urgent things like safety. There are artists who are trapped, who are in the thick of it and they can't get out. So sometimes we talk about the politics as, you know, activism, but I think sometimes it's more than that, because sometimes there are also many artists in Palestine, in Israel, are not activists. They just want to do the art. But because the politics have created a space by which you're just shutting everything down, and that is very dangerous. And which is why I wanted to begin with a statement by Ai Weiwei, because the point of it now is that the algorithms have conditioned us to shut things down, because the kind of anger that creates in us, it's not one that we want to enter into nuanced conversation. We want to very quickly say, are you 1 or 0? Are you black or white? I'm not interested in the many shades of gray, because it takes too much time, too much effort. But all this thing is precisely why the arts is important, because it requires you to enter into these deep conversations and these deep learnings and these deep listening. So I think in a sense, solidarity means action, but it also means that we cannot forget. It's very funny when we were in Montreal. It was at that time Ukraine was like everybody was like there, and then we had colleagues sitting next to me from Afghanistan, and like who is talking about Afghanistan? It's like who is the flavor of the month? We must name this issue, right? Next month, 6 months later, it could be another thing happening, and suddenly we're talking about that. Are we going to forget about Palestinians? Are we going to forget about the Afghanistan? So we have to understand that this is the kind of world that we live in. So we have to be really, really brave to insist on these spaces before we forget. And that's happening right now, every single minute.
Can I just add a brief thing? I think, thank you to both of you for those questions. I'd just like to pick up on one thing that I don't think we addressed, and that is your point around labeling, right? And this is a really difficult balance to actually find. I hear where your concern is coming from. I know No, but I do think we have to be courageous enough to take on questions like that. And I want to thank you for actually putting it on the table. Because let me just say, right, one frame. It's taken us decades for us to get the framing of the global south as a political concept to be accepted, right? So now you'll find people think that the term global south, global north was always used. No, it's not even 10 years old in terms of real traction. But when you unpack what does global south and global north means, right? Another way that is important, I feel, that we need to say, when we say global south, we need to say the overwhelming global majority, and when we say global north, we say they are the global minority. And I'm sorry if this question now is going to make anybody feel uncomfortable, but in the spirit of courage, let me ask this question. How many of you carry passports from what's considered a country in the global south? Put up your hands. Okay, so if we are the global majority, right, then we need to recognize that even a gathering like this, which is well intended, right, and I know there's some reasons why it's less balanced than it was in the past, but we need to just confront the question that oftentimes we don't have exactly the right people in the room, right? And that has to be taken on. So on the one hand, if we don't name it, right, we can't address it. On the other hand, you're also right that when we name, especially in the specific sense, there's a spirit of othering that is happening, right? We're looking more at the differences. But I just want to just say on this question that we just have to constantly continue to work at trying to get it right. I don't think we can afford not to name things that need to be named, but I think we have to find a way to name it in a way in which people who might be identified in one identity to another identity, that they don't feel excluded. I mean, one of the things, to your question, that I have found very, very moving. I mean, for many of us, the last couple months have been horrendous, right? But, you know, I was asked by some US politicians when the Ukraine war started, the occupation of Ukraine started, why is it that so few countries in the global south are standing with Ukraine? And you know, I hadn't thought about that question until it got asked, right? And it just came out naturally. I said, well, the reality is that NATO is essentially a white men's military alliance, right? That's what it is. What is the vested interest for countries in the global south to support NATO? Right? In fact, on this one, I might actually even agree with Donald Trump that NATO probably is not a useful thing to actually have in the world, right? But then, there was such a strong response to the occupation of Ukraine, but we've had decades of occupation of the Palestinian people, and we don't see the same sense of outrage, right? Both are occupations. Both violate international law. And so, yeah, the naming is also necessary because of, and I want to say this very loud and clearly, because of the double standards of many powerful countries in the world, and sadly, both in the global north and global south, but if you want to give prizes for those countries that excel in double standards and double speak, it's the United States, it's Europe, it's the powerful Western countries of the world, and we have to have the courage to say that, right? Sure. Thank you.
Well, we are at a place of passion. I feel like we're having a lot of we're really getting into the roots. And my question to our organizers is do we have any more time for a couple of more questions, or one more question?
I just want to say something also, because I think it's a lot of hate and xenophobia in the country, in the world nowadays, that I think we must be in another side, you know? And have the capacity also to fight about that. In Colombia, we live in a conflict, also in a permanent conflict, but we work hard also to have the possibility, no, to move forward, no. This is idea, and also to give the voice to the artists. The artists have the commitment with the moment who live. And I think it's for that the festival cannot be forbidden the voice for the artists or have banned. No, I think we must be open to talk about the conflict, to talk about what happened. Of course, all my respect about the genocide in Palestine nowadays is something that we must talk. Thank you very much for put in the table this subject, because it's now, no? It's now, and it's true that we have the privilege to be here, but we not can forget what happened in our world.
Okay, I don't have a question, but I have a short comment towards what Ki Hong said and also what Kumi said. My name is Polina, I'm from Ukraine, and I wanted to comment on your rhetorical question about why are some people not in the room and how we can create more open spaces within our festivals to name things correctly and to make some voices present. And I have a suggestion, maybe not an answer, and it is relied on my personal experience. I moved from Ukraine since the full-scale war broke out, and during these 2 years, almost 2 years, I'm living completely different life, professional life in a good way, because I suddenly realized how many colleagues I have in Europe, being kind of in different geographical and political situation, how many beautiful initiatives there are, how many festivals, how many associations, professional networks, supporting communities, and kind of my professional life also started to flourish. But because I received an access to all these offers around me, and I started to participate. But before that, I lived all my life in kind of a bubble without any access to all these offers, to all these initiatives that are present, for example, in Europe or United States. And all these organizations or festivals, whatever, they never try to access my country, my artists, the professionals from my country's field. So kind of I was cut just because of I have to apply for visa to go somewhere, or I have to, you know, like to cross the border is some kind of really event or adventure. And I just simply didn't know that all these things, like the Festival Academy, which I have a privilege to be present at, exist. But the thing is that other organizations never made an attempt to access what is going on in Ukraine, who are there. Maybe there is some interesting things going on. Maybe we can invite someone. And I think it's not only relevant to Ukraine, but to many, many other countries. And I think this also have some relation to power dynamics here. And I think the solution, or a part of the solution, could be if the countries or the initiatives that have much more opportunities start not to question why these people are not there, but really knock to the doors, and try to research what is happening in other countries and how we can invite these people to be present.
Thank you. As we move into the evening, into dinner, my recommendation is, as you keep track of these questions, engage with the panel. We're going to be here, and if there were any further questions that were not answered, please bring them to them one-on-one. Inge, I don't know if you have any announcement, thoughts?
No, thank you very much for fantastic panel conversation and for these questions. I think also the question of who is in the room here tonight really has to do with resources. And this is something that we need to keep on addressing. The support that comes, which is also related to double standards. And I think that the investment that we have been doing with the Festival Academy around that has been a lot, but there needs to be done much, much more. And I'm super happy that we have people, that you are here, that there are people from Lebanon, Egypt, Palestine, to have these voices also present with us. This is the whole purpose of this, to listen to the stories. There's Burkina Faso also. There are so many countries in this place of invisible conflicts. Haiti didn't make it, but this is also a place, and if I would ask the room how many people know what is going on there would be very few. And I think for us, this is really the thing, to get these stories out, make them visible, and share, but really from a personal perspective, and not only from the news or these kind of things. So I just wanted to add that I also want to thank, again, BAM and Under the Radar, CAM, Community Arts Network, who has been supporting this and made also it possible that some of you are here. Rockefeller Brother Funds, the same. Arts Council Korea, and of course, Open Society Foundation, with their very generous support for the work that we're doing.